Good morning, everyone. And the sun is shining in my window and I'm starting to feel like Christmas. And I've got the wonderful Jean with me all the way from the magical island of Skye, where I am so excited to be in a couple of weeks. Jean, how are you doing? Great to see you.
I'm doing very well. Yeah, great to see you too, Lilia. Yeah, good to be doing this again.
Yeah, so we are obviously very excited about Scotland's first ever pop-up healing centre and our variety of ways to get the information that you and I are both absolutely passionate about, which is plants, herbs, the body's ability to heal and being patient and allowing and listening and all the things that we know that nature can provide. And I know that you're very busy with your practice, as is obviously my partner in crime, Claire Houlihan. You know, it's the power is with the plants, isn't it? I mean, you obviously did a couple of case studies at the festival in Skye. Morning, Lorraine. And that went down a storm, and that's why I really wanted to bring that into the healing, because I think the way you talked it through, it just was like, right. So then you know, because you can say, oh, plants are amazing, oh yeah, herbal medicine's amazing, but when you actually take somebody through a case study, suddenly it becomes real. So, you know, and I think this is the thing, isn't it, where things are shifting, and you and I were just talking about this before we came on. There is definitely a move now. People are asking more questions, people are looking for alternatives, and there's a lot of information that you and I have known for a long time that people are still not aware of. So with the healing in Skye, this is what we want to do. You can come and you can stay, and I highly recommend that you do, in that phenomenal setting in Sligachan. And then you can also come for the day if you live in Skye or in the area. And also we're going to be streaming a lot of the information that doesn't require privacy out, and people can learn that way from the comfort of their own home, because we know we have people that are not well enough to come to Skye. We've got a brilliant compensation rate, but if you've got chronic fatigue and a lot of body pain and brain fog and all sorts of other things, so we're going to be offering all of that. So you and I are doing a day, a 2-day retreat. So do you want to just talk about what you're going to be offering on day one?
Yeah, I was thinking about, you know, how best to do it. I mean, the case studies went down very well, and I got such a lot of feedback afterwards about it. And I think that's because, you know, when we talk about functional medicine and then we talk about herbal medicine, people have an understanding to a certain level, but I don't think a lot of people don't actually know how it really works. And that's why I think taking people through case studies is a really beautiful way of showing, well, this is actually what we do. You know, especially functional medicine, which is relatively new. Herbalists have always practiced functional medicine, which is basically getting to the root cause of illness. That's always been our focus. So functional medicine is just a way of actually saying yes, but we can also add in some diagnostic testing to get to the root cause. And so what I wanted to do was in the morning was do a bit more of the case studies, because you can literally take people through a journey and show them what happens when you go to see a medical herbalist or a functional medicine medical herbalist. And so you see the patient right at the very beginning, what they've come in with, their symptoms, and people can relate to that. And then you see what diagnostic things we've had to think about. And then you can see the progression of why we choose certain herbal medicines and how we blend 6, 7, 8 medicines together. And then as the patient continues on the journey through getting better, how the medicines change and evolve. And I think it's nice when people can then connect to a real person, a real case. So I thought we'll do that in the morning. But then in the afternoon, I'd like it to be much more experiential for people to actually go in and look at the kind of energetics that we work with herbal medicine. So the one thing that you're really passionate about, Lilia, and that Heal Scotland is passionate about is the individuality of everybody. Everyone's different. Everyone is individual. Everyone has their own personal story. How they respond to things is different. And that's the beauty of herbal medicine, because we want to find out what that individuality is, and then we blend it with the individual constitution of the plants. And what I want to do is really an afternoon of people learning about how we assess constitution. And I'm going to get everybody to fill in a kind of questionnaire so that they can find out where they fall into that kind of constitutional analysis. And then I want to experience and meet the plants. And everyone will have a slightly different experience because they're all different. And the plant will speak to them in a different way. And so we're going to choose maybe 3 different herbal medicines. We're going to actually make them as a team. We're going to smell them. We're going to imagine them as a person. We're going to imagine them as a color. We're going to taste them. Where do we feel it in our body? And I want them to really connect with the plants, and just learn about that's how I learned herbal medicine. I was lucky. I went to the Scottish School of Herbal Medicine, and every single plant that we learned, 260 odd of them, we met them in that way before we knew what they were. Beautiful way of teaching. And so I'd like to share that with some people that are coming along. I think it'd be good.
Yeah, I know that. I think that's fantastic. And I think if that kind of makes, I know that the first time I did that with Claire, there was 2 men there. One was a GP from France that just happened to be within on the farm. And one was a lovely guy who had just left the army. He was quite high up in the army. So we had 2 men kind of meeting the plants, as you say. And Claire and I sort of looked at each other and we were like, this will be interesting. And, you know, what comes out of these sessions blows your mind. But I think, you know, I was trying to explain this to my daughter. If you really truly understand everything is energy, frequency and information, we are, plants are. And when we come out the conscious mind and we tune in to the information, we all can do it. It's just that we've never been trained like that, have we?
And it's interesting, as children, I think children still have that. One of our teachers always said, for the first 7 years of a child's life, they've still got a foot in that world and a foot in this world, and that they can intuitively feel and do things. And then we gradually get trained out of it as we go through school, basically. And especially women. And actually, that's not true. Men too. Men are always told not to you know, to have an intuitive feeling is devalued in society. But actually, you know, I still base my prescriptions on that first meeting of the plant that I had at the Scottish School of Herbal Medicine 24 years ago. I still will base prescriptions on the feeling that I had when I tasted that. And of course, then it's all, once you have that, you then get the name of the plant, you then research it, and then you connect what that plant's use is along with that energetic approach. And that's where the magic happens in herbal medicine.
Absolutely.
The magic doesn't happen by, you know, looking, you need to look at red blood cells and white blood cells and things like that. But that real connection of a plant that has a 2,000, 3,000 year traditional usage, marrying that with what's going on in someone's life is where the magic happens and the healing happens.
Yeah, you know, one of my friends in Malta, he lived in Paitati in Peru for 7 years. And he said that you had to become the tree or the plant, you know, that he said it was such a very different from the Western way. And I'm just thinking it's such a shame that school doesn't exist, because this is the information that people need now, because we really know instead of toxic treatments, which may or may not be what you need, but we need to have alternatives. And I think this is the thing, you know, like if you want to try another way, you know, there's people like you and Claire are, you know, I think there's definitely a huge increase in people's interest into it. But, you know, you're only 2 humans that can only see a certain amount of people, you know, and even the whole kind of sort of ethos around it, which is that the reason I am sick can be very different from the reason somebody else would be sick. And also, if I'm in the menopause and this other person's got 3 young kids and is a single parent, and I'm sure you find this too. Some people can't manage any more things to do. You have to find a way to instead of putting more fear on and more piling on, well, you need to do this. You need to find a way to help them from where they're at right now.
Yes, and that's the thing that's so important. And I always say to my patients, there's some practitioners. I'm not wanting to badmouth. I'm not badmouthing any other practitioners, but I've met a couple of practitioners in my experience in 20 years. I think they were nutritionists, and my experience with nutritionists is they're fabulous. I work with a group of them, and they're amazing. But I have met one or two that had such high expectations, and so when the patient went in for the consultation, they handed them this diet thing that they wanted them to do. And the patient was also my patient, and she came back to me and she said, I just don't think I can do it. She wants me to buy 90% organic. Now, this was a single parent, and all of these real restrictions, and it was too much. And my thing is in practice is always, you have to meet the person where they are. Absolutely. And then gradually take them on a journey. You cannot ask somebody to go from here to here in one step. You need to just gradually meet. Yeah,
a friend of mine, she was amazing. She healed herself from ovarian cancer, but she's a doctor, and she would say, well, you need to leave your partner, you need to move your house, you need to change your diet. And I was like, it was just, there's too many. Now, all of these things were probably true, but the thing is, it's, we need to take one step at a time, don't we? And this is obviously why we're so, from the Heal Scotland perspective, I remember having this conversation with my cousin who had breast cancer, and she went the conventional route, and she said to me, I know everything you're telling me is true. She said, I don't doubt any of that. She said, but I just have, and the word that she used was, I just have an apathy for being able to do that. And I thought, that's a completely honest and fine thing to say, and you have a choice. We all have. But I think what we're seeing now is people that are like, well, I would rather not maybe they'll have surgery, but they don't want chemo. Maybe they don't want radiation, or, so they're starting to, change.
Make choices.
And instead of taking the package, which is really how it works, that's the name of the cancer, and that's the package you get. People are, and that can really upset a lot of doctors because they don't.
Yeah, I as you know, Lilia, I've been working with patients living with cancer for the whole of my career. I was kind of thrown in at the deep end as a very new graduate. I had literally just qualified, was about to go on holiday, and the gentleman I worked with at the time, his friend, a lady in her, I still got a photograph of her. I've got a photograph of her wheeling her granddaughter around in her backyard in a wheelbarrow, and she's got no hair from the chemotherapy. But this lady, she was diagnosed with terminal cancer. She was given weeks to live, and she had a daughter who was in her 40s who was really severely disabled, and she desperately wanted just to find enough time to find a home for her daughter to go into when she died. And mainstream medicine had refused treatment because her cancer was too widespread. And so I went to do a consultation with her, and I said, well, I didn't even have my dispensary. I had to actually go back to the school and say, can I buy some herbs from you to treat this lady? Couldn't do a consultation because she could barely breathe. She had lung cancer and it was spread. She couldn't breathe. And so we kind of did about 20 minutes of trying to find out some basics. And then I thought, I've got nothing to lose. I gave her Schedule 20s, which are restricted herbs, started working on her lungs. And then I went on holiday, and I expected to come back to hearing about her death. And I came back and did a full consultation with her.
Wow.
I'd used a specific Schedule 20 that helps open up the airways. And this lady, she could speak, she could breathe. And so I started working with her. Now, she died, but she died 22 months later. And right up to what happened was she ended up having chemotherapy because she'd survived. They said, let's give you chemo. They then eventually did, and she was still chopping her own wood and feeding her ducks and all the rest of it, right up to about a month before she died. Then they gave her radiotherapy, and the radiotherapy paralyzed her trachea and esophagus, and she basically couldn't eat, couldn't swallow, and she died because of the treatment. Now, she still had cancer. She wasn't cured, but she got 22 months in order to find a place for her daughter.
Yes.
I had a cord at her funeral on her coffin. And, you know, it transformed my practice because we were always told, watch what you do. You really shouldn't treat cancer patients. And since that, I have always worked with cancer, always. And I will never refuse.
Yes, well, I mean, I think it is about just for today and talking to somebody that, you know, because I remember when Joanna, my friend's daughter, a friend of mine as well, when she was dying, she got diagnosed at 16 and she died at 27. And I'll remember probably just a few months before she died, she said, you know, my goal always was to be a TV presenter. And she said, now I would just love to be able to go out in the garden and sit with that tree. And I think that's what happens is, you know, and if somebody has, I lost a friend just a few months ago, and he was at home in the sitting room in a hospital bed, we would have had him another day in it, because what a laugh we had with him. You know, so that day, people caring, and our system is so strapped with fear and the language. And I just don't think that is helpful ever. You know, I'm not sure how you can, you don't want to start saying, well, you shouldn't be doing that unless you've got a better idea. But certainly discussing things that you can do. And because we know, don't we, putting people into fight or flight, survive state, you know, immediately just sets I know. So
and it's very hard. It's hard to go against the system. I really feel for people. It's really hard to go against. I'm working with a lady at the moment who has refused chemotherapy. She's had surgery and agreed to radiotherapy. But from the outset, we discussed it. And from the outset, she was determined she didn't want to have chemo. Now, I say to my patients, I'll support you, whatever decisions you make. And I'll work with you with chemotherapy, and I will work to support you if you choose not to have it. It's a bit of a conveyor belt. I've had patients who have gone for a mammogram, and at that mammogram, been then sent for ultrasound, biopsy immediately, told of cancer, and they went for a normal mammogram and came out with the first date of the chemo. Now, where have you had a chance to even process that and make a decision? And yes, I'm grateful for the fact that we've got these systems that are in place, and a lot of people are very, very grateful for them. But we need to have lots of discussion around this. And
well, this is the thing. Can we not talk? And you know, I know that I've got friends who have said, oh, you know, a bit older, maybe even older than me, and saying, no, I'm not having treatment. And I think, you know, you get to a certain age, you think, oh, no, I've seen what happens to people. I'm not going to do that. And I think that's absolutely, you're right. And I think definitely when you're younger, you can get pressurised and treated differently. You know, my friend who lost her daughter last year, she was 23 and she said, you can't heal me. I'm not dying making Big Pharma richer. I will die on my terms. I don't think anybody had really ever spoken like that to them before. And afterwards they said, you know, and she was treated differently because she didn't want to take the treatment. And, you know, that's
very common.
Really sad. Yeah, it is. And one of my other friends, the consultant said to her, what is it with people from your postcode think they can heal themselves?
Well, that's good. Do you know, I once had a nurse come in that I was working with. She was a nurse. So she was in the NHS. She wasn't a cancer nurse, but she was a nurse in the Royal Edinburgh, and she had breast cancer. And by the time she came to me, she had been through 3 different types of chemo, and she still had cancer. They were still treating her for cancer. And I'll never forget the day that she came into my practice, and she just looked ashen, and she sat in the chair, and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I've just been for my chemo appointment. They've told me that the chemo's stopped working, and that it's now immune to chemotherapy, and that the cancer is resistant, and that there's no more treatment they can offer me." And I said, "Well, that's what happens." She didn't have a clue. Nobody had ever told her this. Nobody had ever said that the more chemo and the more types of chemo you use, if you're not curing, if you're not, if you've got spread, if you've got metastatic disease and you keep changing chemos, the tumor adapts and it learns how to evade treatment. And that is well known. That's well documented. That's not alternative. That's well documented within the NHS. Nobody had ever told her that the more you use it, the less effective it will become. And of course, your immune system is becoming more and more depleted. She was totally shocked that that's what her fate was, and she died. And I just wish we could have these conversations right at the very beginning, so people know, and people can then make it.
It's the rush, isn't it? It's the the sooner we, and I think that people, obviously, especially before, if you had a tumour, you want it out. That's a completely normal thing to think. But I think now we need to be like, right, and this is what my cousin said to me. She said, I gave her a list of questions to ask the oncologist, and he sat in her bed and he said, "I'm going to be honest with you, nobody's ever asked me this." He said, "And if I'm going to tell you, what we have is not perfect, but it's all we've got." And she was like, "Well, that's fine, that's honest. Good morning, Ian, how you doing?" So, and it's not a big competition of you right, I'm wrong, you got to take this. It's about, let's have a look at all the things that we can do, and let's have a look, and what, like Kelly Turner's research, the thing, I was lucky enough to interview Kelly Turner years ago at a Goddess gathering, and she said the thing that struck her most over doing her PhD over 10 years was that every single person that she interviewed, regardless of age, sex, colour, creed, wealth bracket, they all said, "I listened to the voice inside," intuition, right? We would probably call it. And that was the thing that really surprised her most, because she put together the 9 things in her first book, Radical Remissions, that everybody did to some degree or another. Some did focus more on one thing. This is a big challenge, isn't it? Everybody's doing it. The people that I know that I feel have all done it completely different ways. But I think my friend Kathy Grout, who wrote Why Rabbits Don't Get Lymphoma, what she basically said is, she said, I looked at all the different diets, that were, and she said, and I know that they all work, but I thought, I can't do that. I can't do that.
Yes.
Oh, but I can do that. So that's how she chose. And I think that's a really smart way to choose. And, it depends what diet you're coming from. If you have a very processed food diet, and somebody's like that will go on Gerson, you just be recoiling horror, But if you're already, eating a very clean, healthy, whole food diet, sticking some juices in is not going to be that big a deal. So that's like the saying. But it's also what my cousin said to me: you need to learn this before you need it, because obviously when you get the diagnosis, that's when everybody, and it would depend what number because that's the other thing. This stage 1, 2, 3, 4, aggressive, incurable. All these words that come at people, and they just go into fight or flight. Obviously, they can't think straight, and they're not going to probably learn. My friend that has refused all treatment, she's not done any surgery or chemo or radiation, and that's quite unusual. But she just said she just knew, no, I'm not doing it, and she's 18 months into her journey now, and that's not everybody's going to choose that. Very few people are, but still you're right to choose it. And I think because we have since the 19 Cancer Act, which is just madness, absolute madness. It's nearly 100 years old, and we are. I mean, when Danielle died last year of leukemia, it was 30 years almost to the day since Joanna had been diagnosed, and I was like, God, we've not come anywhere in 30 years.
It's funny Yeah, the other thing is that we tend to think that we're the gold standard, and we're not.
Not.
You know,
No,
there are countries,
exactly.
Istanbul in Turkey is doing groundbreaking work using medicinal mushrooms with minute doses of chemotherapy, but plummeting their blood sugar levels before they go in for the chemo. And they had a patient who was surviving excess of 10 years with pancreatic cancer. That's unheard of.
Absolutely.
We need to be
It's the same in
discussing
Mexico. Countries that we
Yeah.
consider to be third world. My friend, she's a
Yeah.
Chinese doctor. She went to Israel. She said they're decades ahead of us because what they
Yeah.
do, if they use chemo, they go straight in with the herbs straight afterwards to make sure they detox. Yeah, it's and I think that's why it's annoying when the egos come up and the wanting to be right. It's like all of us want is for our loved ones to have the best possible information, the best possible chance, and the nicest possible places to be if you need support and help. And that should never be competitive. That should be 100% collaborative. And if somebody dares to question something, that's great. Let's have the conversations. It's madness. It's madness.
And I think the sad bit about it is that most people that come to that point they're in fear. They're frightened. You know, all the patients, the minute you get a cancer diagnosis, people are frightened. And so you're more vulnerable to making impetuous decisions just simply because, especially when you've got experts telling you that this is the right way to do and the only way to do it. It's very difficult to step outside that. And we do need to discuss this and offer people support when they want more answers. And, you know, again, I come back to the fact that the system is like a conveyor belt. They don't have time. I mean, you see the consultant once, and then after that, you'd probably never see that consultant again. You see everybody below the consultant. And there's never that chance to really go back and question, or if there is, you're seen as a difficult patient. And we just need to open up the dialogue and open up the people's choices and
also
let
trust, you know, trust in the information that's coming through your body. And this is the thing, you know, if you're in a lot of fear, and I'm sure people come to you, usually by the time they come to me, they've had chemo quite often twice, and there's nothing else. So, you know, that's a much more difficult position to help somebody to heal than somebody who's not at any level of that treatment. But, you know, still, even then, there's still things you can do to make yourself feel better today, because that's all that we've got. And I had a really interesting situation when I was living in Malta. I had two young girls. They were both early 30s, and they both had chemo, radiation, and surgery twice. One girl didn't have any kids. One had two young kids. Claire and Sabrina were their names. And I'd said, Sabrina came to see me, and she said that they both, the two of them were offered to go to the UK for special chemo. And you know what my doctor friend said? He said, do you know what special means? Experimental. And I thought, well, that's coming from a GP. I hadn't even really thought about that. But anyway, Sabrina, she said, I know you won't stick your neck out, but what do you think I should do? And I said, well, see, if you were my daughter and chemo hadn't worked twice, there's no way you'd be going to get any more. I said, I would put you on the Gerson treatment, Gerson therapy. So she said, right, okay. And she ended up moving into my house because I knew she would never be able to do it on her own. And she lost a lot of weight. There was a lot of kicking and screaming and crying, but we became very close. And she did an amazing. And then I had to come back to the UK, and she moved back home, and she came off the therapy. Meantime, Claire went to the UK for the special chemo, and she died in the UK. And then that was a disaster. The stress of trying to get her back to Malta. Sabrina lived about another year after that. And she died as well. And I thought, God, isn't that interesting? They both came in at the same time, both with these options. One chose one and one chose, and there's no right or wrong. You've got to do what you feel is right. And Sabrina's cousin in Australia wrote to me and said, I cannot thank you enough for what you did. It's the happiest I've ever seen her. She was jumping for joy. And so, even although death is the kind of place we're all going, and, certainly a lot of the young mums that I deal with, you feel it's too soon. It's still about the quality today. Quality today, and I think we have to be more candid about that. And if it's not worked once, is there a chance that will work the second time? And also that I've always thought this about Danielle. If you've got 30 to 40 people saying you're an idiot, you've got to take treatment, you're going to die if you don't take treatment. But if you had 30 to 40 people saying, well, come on, give it a bash. Let's try this. Have you thought of this? Let's look at some protocols. How's that going to feel energetically? And what difference is that going to make to your result? Because it's almost like you've been sent to Coventry because you're not doing what you're told. And I think that's just something that we just have to get all that out from under the carpet and be brave enough to have these conversations. We can get completely shot down in flames. And the thing is, if somebody came to me and said, do you think I should take chemo? And I said no, they're going to take it anyway. You know, there's no way people are going to do what I tell them.
I'm the same. I would never influence anybody either way. I always send it back to themselves and say, you need to think about this. You need to find out as much as you possibly can. And then you need to make the right decision that you know that you can live with. Because they ultimately feel safe. Just make that decision and then stick to it, but make sure you've got a team round about you. But I just wish. I think one of the most frustrating things that I find is that when I have patients that are having chemotherapy, mainstream medicine is brutal about not allowing them to do any other therapy at the same time. And it takes somebody brave to turn around and say, well, actually, no, I am actually going to be taking herbal medicine as well. I've sent my patients into their oncologist with a research paper that showed one herb in particular, Astragalus membranaceus, that shows that chemotherapy is more effective if you take Astragalus at the same time. And there's a double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial on Astragalus along with chemo. And every single oncologist will tell them, you cannot take that. It's old research because it isn't today. But you know how hard it is to do research on herbal medicine. It's a fantastic paper. Their research is all old. The research on chemo that they're using for a lot of it is off-label. So they're not even using it for the diseases that the research showed that it was effective against, but they will not accept us. And so, you know, why I understand that you have to be careful with certain things along chemo. You never want to stimulate liver function and stuff. But my goodness, there's such a lot. I have kept my chemo patients' white blood cells and red blood cells within the normal levels using herbal medicine. And yet if they went with what their oncologist said, they wouldn't be using anything, not even allowed to use a probiotic.
I know, but this is what I mean about the competition. It's like, I'm right and my way is the only way. And we're 2025 nearly, and you have only one thing that you can do if you get diagnosed, unless you've got a lot of money and you can go other places, or unless you're very well educated and you know what to do. I think that's just madness. You would never do that. You just say, well, there's only one person that can, you know, build you a house, and that's it. That's it. You would be like, well, no, what have other people got to say about it? We wouldn't do that in any other walk of life. It's madness. Morning, Kate. How you doing? I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll end up being strung up. You realise, Lilia, this is challenging. It's good.
I am well used to that, and happy to have the debate, because really, we're past the time. You know, we've got phenomenal information, and that's the Heal Scotland mission, is to get this information out so that people can choose whatever you want. I don't care how many drugs you take or how many jabs you take. If that's what you want to do, happy days. But we're now looking at people that are not happy doing that. And also with all the chronic autoimmune stuff that we're seeing that is crippling our nation, is crippling the global, you know, all the Western cultures, that there is no drug or surgery that can fix that. And we're going to have to look into the gut and into the plants and into things that genuinely do no harm. So and obviously when we in Skye, in that phenomenal location, and we're going to be streaming out a lot of this information live to people, and we're going to be looking at trust, because obviously from my perspective, from letting go, you know, I'll say, do you believe that you can heal? And some people, yeah, I do. But do you really? Is that what's in your
Really?
subconscious? Is that what people around you? Because I know with Joanna and with Danielle, they could feel that people were, not not saying what they were really genuinely thinking.
Yeah.
So it's the body language thing, isn't it? It's like, oh, it's a wee shame for you because you think you can heal yourself, but you can't. And it's like, just you watch, and it's, and then it becomes a competition, which should never ever be. And that's why, see that place in Sligachan, what a place for a healing centre, sitting at the base of the mountains, looking at that river, all the experts that we've got coming there. This is the way we need to go ahead with it. And we need to have places where people can come as a family to learn how to live again, or to die in peace. Because sometimes I think, I was talking to my friend the other day, and he said, oh, my dad's just had enough. And, you're like, that's okay to say that. I've had enough treatment. Yeah. So let's go. Well, how can we make today a bit better? Just for today, can we make this? Oh, there's Shirley there. I know Shirley's my friend who lost their daughter last year, Danielle. The most incredible human being I've ever met, honestly. What a family they are. Yeah, Shirley, were definitely, I wish she'd had more time too. But, everybody says that to me, but Joanna, do you not wish she knew all this when Joanna was alive? And I said, if Joanna, that hadn't happened to Joanna, I wouldn't have gone down this road. We're learning.
Exactly.
It's sad. We're losing people in the progress, but I do believe we'll see them again. I used herbs for my cervical cancer 25 years ago. Maureen Robertson set up a Scottish school where treated me. I had PV internal herbs and oral diagnosed after my second baby. I'm fit and well. Brilliant. That's a brilliant story. Had no more smears. I wish people would realise how fab it is. Well, we are doing our best, Kate, and you are helping. We want to get this information out to the people that are ready and willing, and so much of what you and Claire, you give away so much information, because we always come to this thing about cost. And I always say to people, if you came to me and said, my daughter's ill or my mum's ill, and I'm not going to tell you how to help, what you can do, unless you pay me. There's just something innately, we have to share this information. And of course, we all have to pay our bills as well. So let's not kid on that money doesn't have to be exchanged in energy. But I really refuse to believe that if you're in a low financial bracket, that you don't have the capacity to heal. There's loads of great products, but there's also very affordable herbs. And if we didn't plough all that crazy money into the corrupt government and corrupt pharma, think what we could create in our communities. I mean, look behind you at all that phenomenal medicine, that is just going to enhance your health and your vitality and your happiness. And also, I think, if somebody comes to me, obviously, I'm a nutritionist as well, but I'm also, my big passion's letting go. It's all the emotional stuff for me. You need to learn how to manage your emotional system. But if somebody said to me, I'm really anxious, I cannot not think about what's going on in your gut. It's not possible, because if you're poisoned with heavy metals, if your microbiomes and you've got a leaky gut, you ain't going to be happy. You can't be, because your body's struggling, the body's knocking. Come on, I need help here. And we just didn't understand the language before. But luckily, thanks to people like you, we're getting the word out. So I'm going to be helping people with trust, the trust in the body, the trust in the phenomenal intelligence that this energy system is. And that when we allow it with the right plants, because plants are food as well, right? Yes. We've got everything we need. How did we ever get to this place where we were duped into thinking we had to pay huge amounts of money, and we need to wait for somebody in a laboratory to discover something before we can heal. So I'm going to be working on trust and intuition, and it's same as you, and really bringing that inner trust and that power right out. So it's going to be a phenomenal couple of days, and you can join in, come and stay with us in Skye, eat John's amazing food, hang out with myself and Jean, and really regain your trust in nature and plants and the herbs for regaining your health and vitality. Now, is there anything you'd like to say, Jean, before we finish off?
It's going to be fab. No, really looking forward to it. It was just this year's was just fantastic. It was such a great experience. I'm really looking forward to meeting another bunch of people and spending some really good quality time. And I will be there for 2 days, and I'm there to answer any questions, to share anything I possibly can, even out with the things that I'm going to be doing. So just want to offer my time there. Which will be
well,
great.
Exactly. It's people can get to talk to you personally and talk about their own. And you know what? I always think as well, you want to be able to help your kids and your grandkids. You know, we gave our kids a lot of stuff back in the day because we didn't know about destroying the microbiome. We didn't know about toxicity. We didn't know about heavy metals. But now we do. And now we're like, right, okay. You want your family to have access to stuff that works, but that's not going to cause any harm. So absolutely. Fantastic. Well, great. Thanks, guys. Hopefully we will see you in Skye. Okay, have a wonderful Christmas and holiday season if I don't see you, Jean. All the best.
You too, Lily. Take a break.
Thank you.